Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this live stream. My name is Hassam Hassina, and I lead the program for the Microsoft Reactor in the Middle East and Africa. And the reactors are global hubs for founders and developers to meet, learn, connect, and learn from experts from Microsoft, from the open source community, from the Azure community as well, all about what's happening in tech and all the latest. And during this month and last month, we've been doing different series, and in this series, we've been doing 4 parts on Power BI. So we kicked off with January 30, and we've been doing 4 different sessions to discuss Power BI Everywhere series. I'm adding David here with me on the stage to tell us more about what has been happening in this series for someone who joined us maybe today, seeing this live stream, and what to expect on today's live stream.
Oh,
Thank you for
great.
joining
Thank
us,
you,
David.
Sam, thank you for bringing me on. Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're watching from. My name is David Abu, Cloud Advocate for Power BI here at Microsoft. And for the Power BI Everywhere series, the idea has been that Power BI is a very big analytic engine and is in different and it can work with different data sources. So anywhere your sources is coming from, especially if it is cloud, how do you interact with it? How does Power BI interact with the different cloud services or cloud storage that we have? And we went and we worked on the Azure SQL, we worked on the Dataverse, and we also did some composite models for enterprise solution. And today we'll be working on Purview and Synapse to see how we do that. And I'm happy to introduce Josh to you today, who will be taking us on the Power BI Everywhere series with the Power BI, Purview, and Azure experience. Hi, Josh.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, thank you. So, I want you to just show us. I want to give you the floor because I know that you have so many things to do. For those who wants to watch all our previous videos, we are going to be showing you where to just check them. If you can check the Reactor YouTube, you're going to see every other things there. Also, we'll be making links out for you to see the other ones. But Josh, I know you have so many things that you want to show us today. To give you the floor for you to show us. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much, David. So today's session, we'll be looking at the integrated Power BI experience in Azure Synapse. And so we'll just do a quick introduction to what Azure Synapse Analytics is. We'll look at the data transformation and data management on Azure Synapse. And then we look at data visualization with Power BI and how it integrates to the data that we already have in Synapse. And I'll do all of these with a demo of Power BI and Synapse integration. The demo is open source, and we'll be sharing the links, as David has said, at the end of this session, so that maybe you can be able to try out these on your own after the session. So let's get started by having a look, or rather having an understanding of what Azure Synapse Analytics actually is. So to begin with, we'll look at the architecture of the modern data warehouse. So when you think of the architecture of a modern data warehouse on Azure, on the left, we have your different data sources. So these data sources could be data from your on-premises, could be cloud data, could be data from your SaaS application, or even data from your devices. And these different sources, the data can be structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data, and we'll be able to see these in the demo later on. So from our different data sources, next we have the Azure Data Factory, which will act as the integration service in this architecture, where the data is ingested from various sources and stored in the Azure Data Lake storage. Now, the storage service can handle any type of data, regardless of its volume, variety, or velocity. Now, then we have this transformation stage, which involves preparing the data for analysis by cleaning, transforming, and aggregating it. And this can be achieved by tools such as Azure Databricks and Azure HD Insights. And these tools will offer you with an extensive data transformation capabilities, including data cleaning, data transformation, and data aggregation. Next, We have data warehousing, which can be used to analyze the data, since it has a powerful, massive parallel processing, which will enable you to run complex queries. And now the results of this analysis can then be presented in a visual format using the Power BI service, which can then create reports and visualization of the data. Now, if you look at this architecture from end to end, there's so many services involved. And sometimes when we're working on this kind of architectures, there are different issues that we may face, such as connection issues between these services, network issues between the services. And even though this architecture will look good on paper, when we start actually implementing this kind of architecture in the real world, we'll actually face a lot of different types of issues, including the fact that you're managing different services. What if we combined all of these services into one, so that we don't have to face this kind of communication and not networking issues between services, or even managing the different resources? And that's where Azure Synapse Analytics comes in. Everything you saw in the previous slide for the ingestion, the transformation, the storage, or the storage and analysis using the SQL data warehouse, all of that can be handled single-handedly using one service, which is the Azure Synapse Analytics. So to support the analytics needs of today's organization, Synapse Analytics will combine all these services into a centralized service for data storage and processing with an extensible architecture through which you can have linked services, which will enable you to integrate commonly used data stores, processing platforms, and visualizing tools. So you can be able to see everything in Synapse, but everything we had in the previous architecture for your modern data warehouse and is now here in Synapse. And now Synapse has these linked services, which you can use to integrate with other processing platforms and visualization tools like Power BI. You can even be able to link with tools like Azure Machine Learning. You can also have linked services such as Microsoft Purview for your data governance, data governance needs. And the advantage for this is that you have less components to learn, manage, and maintain as opposed to the other architecture. You'll also be paying for only one service. And also one other thing is that you realize one of the core services we have here that was in the previous architecture is the Azure Data Lake, in which we have the data files that are stored and processed at scale. So the Azure Synapse Analytics workspace will typically have a default Azure Data Lake, as we'll see, which is also implemented as a linked service to an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. And you can be able to add linked services from multiple data lakes that are based on different storage platforms as required. And we're going to see this in the demo once we turn over to the Azure Portal. One of the key features of the Azure Synapse Analytics is its powerful data management capabilities, because you can be able to easily ingest and store large amounts of data and then manage it in a secure and a scalable manner. Now, data transformation is also a key aspect of Azure Synapse Analytics, and the solution will provide you with a suite of data processing and data quality, data enrichment tools that will allow you to quickly and easily transform your data to the format you need for analysis. Now, the Azure Synapse has different components, and one of the key components is the Synapse Studio. Now, Azure Synapse Studio will be your centralized hub for data management and data transformation in Synapse Analytics. We're going to look at Azure Synapse Studio in the next slide in details. But other key components of Azure Synapse Studio include the Synapse SQL, which provides a SQL interface for querying and managing data in Azure Synapse Analytics. We also have Apache Spark for SQL, which is also available for providing you with a big data processing engine for large-scale data analysis. So let's have a look at what Azure Synapse Studio actually is. Now, Azure Synapse Studio is actually is the tool that you're going to be using for all these different processes that I've mentioned that you can be able to do using Synapse. So Synapse Studio will be divided into different activity hubs, which will organize the different tasks that you need for building analytics solutions. So like, for example, you have the data hub, which will help you to explore the different data within Synapse. So these will include the linked data that you've linked to your Synapse workspace, and as well as the data that is within the Synapse workspace. You also have the develop hub that will allow you to write code and define business logic for your pipelines, using notebooks, SQL scripts, or data flows, and we're going to look at these in depth as we move forward. It also provides you with a central place to manage your entire workspace. Your entire workspace. These will include things like your linked services, your different pools. These can be your Apache pools, your SQL pools, and it also provides you with a design hub where you're able to design your pipelines that will move and transform your data within Synapse Analytics. Now, as I've mentioned about the Data Hub will allow you to explore data within the workspace. So the data within the Synapse workspace, and also data in the linked storage accounts that you can link to Azure Synapse. The other hub is the Develop Hub and the Data Flows. So in the Develop Hub, you can be able to create, you can be able to follow a paradigm where you write your code for the different jobs that you have on Synapse, and we're going to see these in the demo. But alternatively, you can also use data flows, which are a visual way of specifying how you transform data with a code-free experience. So that means even if you don't have any coding experience and you still want to perform some of these processes, like maybe copying data from one source to another, things like different transformation without writing code, you can be able to do that using the data flows within Synapse. The other thing is still inside the Develop Hub, you have the integrated Power BI experience. So inside here, when you link Power BI with your Synapse workspace, what happens is you are able to even edit reports just within the Azure Synapse workspace. Now that I've just mentioned some of the key features, let's switch over to seeing these in action, and so that we can be able to understand some of these services one by one within the Synapse workspace. So for today's demo, we're going to be using the Snapshot Serengeti dataset, which is an open dataset you can be able to access and follow along, and we'll be sharing the links to that. So just to give you a good architecture of the kind of the demo that we'll be doing today, we have our data, which is the Snapshot Serengeti dataset, which is publicly available data, and it's in public Azure storage containers. So you can be able to access this data, and the data has all the different kinds of data I had mentioned. We have semi-structured data, which are JSON files. We have unstructured data, which are zip files, and we also have unstructured data, which are images. Now we'll ingest these data using Synapse pipeline. Remember when I was talking of the modern data warehouse and we were ingesting using Azure Data Factory, and when we're just using Synapse, we just use the Synapse pipelines for that, for data ingestion. So we're going to ingest this data, and then we're going to store the data in the Azure Data Lake. So for these JSON files, we're going to ingest these JSON files and store them into the Azure Data Lake. We'll also perform some transformation on the zip files where we'll be able to unzip these files and also store the unzipped JSON files in the Azure Data Lake. Then we'll also perform some transformation on the unzipped JSON file by reading through the content and storing that in the Synapse, in the Azure Synapse, in the Synapse SQL data warehouse, and we're going to store that inside the SQL data warehouse. Then from that, we'll use the data that we've been able to extract and transform, and we'll be able to use that data for machine learning, to train a machine learning model, and then deploy the model. So for purposes of today's demo, we'll not do much on step 6 and step 7, but we'll just highlight how you can be able to achieve all of that within Synapse. And the most important thing is being able to have the visualizations inside Power BI. So the visualization of the data that we've extracted and transformed, and also the visualization from the results, the training results from your Azure machine learning. So this is the demo we're going to be looking at, just so that we can be able to understand the integration of Azure Synapse, which actually everything inside here is happening inside Synapse, and its integration with Power BI. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share a different screen so that we can go to Azure Portal. I'm going to share my screen, different screen. And all right, so this is the Azure Portal. So to follow along, you just need an Azure subscription for these purposes. So to begin with, you just need to create a new resource for Azure Synapse. So just click on create a resource, and then it's for Azure Synapse. Azure Synapse Analytics, there it is. So just create an Azure Synapse Analytics resource. So this should be just the same. I'm sorry about that. Let's do that again. So create a resource. Synapse. So yeah, this one here, Azure Synapse Analytics, create. Sorry, I don't know why it's giving me some trouble. Let's try that again. Click on create. Oh, let's try something else differently. Let me do this differently. You go to a resource group. Oh, just a minute. Okay. Let's open a resource. Let's open this resource group. Okay. So if you were to create a new resource, let's try again. Just search for the Synapse and create. Oh, not sure really what's going on, but seems like I have a small issue there. But I had already created the resource, so I'm just going to switch directly to the resource I had already created for Synapse. All right, so I'm going to go to this resource group, and I'll just show you the different resources we had created right here. So inside here, you can be able to see we have created our Synapse workspace right here. And once you create the your Synapse workspace, as I mentioned when we were going through the slides, by default, it comes with the Azure Data Lake storage, which is attached to it. So you can be able to see we have a storage account for the we have a storage account which is attached to our Synapse workspace. So when I switch over to our Synapse workspace right here, so if you were to open the Azure Synapse workspace after successfully creating your Synapse workspace, if you were to open it and you scroll down here, you should be able to see right here, open Synapse Studio. So if you click open Synapse Studio, it should take you to the Azure Synapse Studio for the workspace that you've just created. Now, and once you come to the Synapse Studio, you can be able to see the different hubs that I was talking about. So on the Data Hub, you can be able to see the different data sources that you have inside Synapse. You can see the default one, which is the Azure SQL Data Warehouse, which is attached to this workspace. And right here under the linked data sources, you can be able to see the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, which is the default storage for this Synapse workspace. So as I mentioned, this Synapse, when you create a Synapse workspace, it automatically creates a storage Gen 2 account, which you use for the storage for Synapse. And you can be able to come inside here, you can be able to attach, or you can be able to link different different data sources. You can be able to see if you are to browse your gallery. So sorry, not gallery. If you are to come here and if you were to add, you can be able to link maybe a SQL database or a lake database, or you can be able to connect to an external data source. You can be able to see the various ones that are supported. So if you have data sitting in blob storage, in Cosmos DB, in Azure Data Lake Storage, you can be able to link that as well into Synapse, and then you can be able to use your data from within Synapse. Inside the Develop Hub, you can be able to see what I was talking before. Inside here now, you can be able to maybe write your SQL scripts, the different SQL scripts that you can use within to query data from the SQL warehouse that is attached to your Synapse workspace. You can also be able to write notebooks, different notebooks. So, like for example, we have, and I'll be coming to these in more detail as we're going through the demo. But you can be able to have these different notebooks, and to do that, you just right here, and you can be able to create your notebook. And for the notebooks, you can be able to see you can do that in either Python. You can do that in either Python or C#, and you can be able to write your code for your different notebooks right from within here. The other thing that is supported, as we had mentioned, are the data flows. And you can see for the different data for the data flow, once you click data flow, this is the code-free experience. So for both the notebooks and the SQL script, you need to have some for SQL script, you need to have some knowledge in writing your SQL queries. For the notebooks, whether you're writing them in Python or C#, you need some knowledge, some programming knowledge. But for the data flows, it's a code-free experience, and you don't need any prior experience. You don't need any prior coding experience for you to do that. And the last thing right here is Power BI, and we'll be seeing these in a few as we progress. Then the other part is the Integrate tab. And here you can be able to build your pipelines. So you can be able to create your pipelines in Synapse and for the different jobs, and you can be able to run these pipelines on schedule. You can be, based on different triggers. So you can be able to schedule when they run and so on and so forth. And then inside here under the Manage tab, which is where I want us to begin before we dive into the demo, you can be able to manage your different pools. So if it's your SQL pools, you can be able to manage here. So we have two types of SQL pools. We have the serverless SQL pools and the dedicated SQL pools. And you can be able to see we have the default serverless SQL pool, which is built in the moment you create your workspace. But you can be able to create a dedicated SQL pool, and you can be able to give it a name, adjust the different settings, and go ahead and create it. And then you can be able to use that particular SQL pool for executing your different SQL queries. So if you can see inside the Develop Hub, if I was to create a new SQL script, I should be able to specify the different SQL pools. So you can be able to see this right now. It's connected to the built-in serverless pool, but I have this dedicated default SQL pool that I had created, and you can be able to select which SQL pool it actually uses for the execution of your script. You can also be able to manage your Apache Spark pools the same way as I had mentioned. You should be able to create your Apache Spark pools, and now using your Spark pools, you can be able to run different workloads. So, like for example, the different notebooks I had created right here, I should be able to select. If I come right here, I should be able to select which pool it attaches to. So like you can be able to see for this one, I had created this default pool, and then you attach it to the default pool, and then you can be able to run this job or this notebook from the default pool. Then right here under external connection, you can be able to see your different linked services, and you can be able to see for this particular workspace, I've linked the following different services. One, we have a connection to the Azure Databricks. And if you remember from the architecture diagram for the demo that I showed, we were using Azure Databricks for the training of our machine learning, for the data preparation and and training of our machine learning model. So I've been able to link an instance of the Databricks directly from here. You're able to see we also have a link for Power BI. We'll be looking at these just in a little while, and you can be able to see the different connections right here. For example, this one is for the data warehouse. And this one is for the default storage for the Azure Data Lake storage, and even for the Vault. So like I have an Azure Vault, an Azure Key Vault, and I'm able to link that as well inside here. And to create a linked service, you just click on right there, and you can be able to see the different services that you can be able to link into your Synapse workspace. So let's dive now into the demo that into the demo that we're looking at. So remember I mentioned that our data, the data from the Synapse, the data from Snapshot Serengeti, and this is the data we are using, it's really massive data, and the metadata is in the form of zipped JSON files. So inside Synapse, we created the first notebook, which is this one right here, the copy metadata files right here. And what it actually does, it goes and copies these files. It copies these metadata files. They are in zipped format, so it's going to unzip and copy them into the Azure Data Lake storage. So that's what this notebook does. So we start by reading the zipped files, and then extracting and storing them into the Azure Data Lake storage that is attached to the Synapse workspace. And just the key thing to highlight is that from the linked services that I just showed, we have the credentials for the Azure Data Lake storage stored in the Key Vault. And so we can be able to access all our linked services inside here from within Synapse. Within the notebook, we can be able to access the linked services. And when we execute this notebook, you can be able to see, if I come to the linked services, we have the default Azure Data Lake storage. And if I was to come here under Snapshot Serengeti, you can be able to explore the data and see the data. So we copied the metadata file. It was just zipped from here, from the public data. These are just zipped files. After running the notebook, what actually happens is we unzip that data and we store these JSON files, and you can see that they're a little bit large JSON files, and we store them into the Azure Data Lake storage Gen 2. So the first step is, when ingesting and transforming our data, is being able to unzip these files and store them into the Azure Data Lake storage. And you can be able to see these are just JSON files, but for us to be able to train the ML model, we need to be able to extract this data and store it into the Azure SQL data warehouse. Now, going back here, so that's what this particular notebook does. These copy zipped metadata. So this is written in C#, and I'm just going to scroll down here so that I can just show you what actually is happening. So we're just listing the files that we're going to copy. So these are the files that are publicly available from the Azure Storage container. So we just loop through all these files, and we extract and save the zipped file into the Azure Data Lake storage. So that's the first process. Now, once we've finished unzipping and copying these metadata files into Azure storage, into the Azure Data Lake storage, the next step is reading through these JSON files and then storing the data into the Azure SQL data warehouse. You can think of these as flattening the JSON files. So like being able to read through all of them and storing all of these data into the SQL data warehouse so that we can be able to use that data for training our machine learning model. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the bulk of the details of this code. We're going to avail all of these resources. You can be able to, you should be able to access all of these. We'll provide links for you to access these. But basically, what is happening again inside here, we'll be reading through all the JSON files that are now in the Azure Data Lake storage Gen 2. And then from there, we are going to store that data into the Azure SQL data warehouse. Now, if I come to the data tab, you can be able to see we have this dedicated, we have this SQL database, which is linked to this Synapse workspace. And under the tables, after running this notebook, what you find is it goes ahead and creates 5 tables. So we have an annotations table, categories table, an images table, and a train table. And maybe we can just be able to look at the data inside these tables. And to do that, you just go back to the develop tab and can create a SQL script from inside here just to see the data that is inside these tables that have been created after running the second notebook. So to do that, I can just be able to write my SQL queries directly from within Synapse Studio, and just do like select or maybe from then you can just like execute that. And so, we need to select, sorry about that. Let me close a few of these tabs. So we need to select, so we're using the dedicated SQL pool, and then the database is right there, and then we can now execute. Good. And so you can be able to see it returns the different categories. So these are the different categories of animals within the data set. So we are able to read from the categories table. We can be able to see the same from maybe like from the validation. So the val table contains the data for the validation data that we're going to be using when training the ML model. And you can be able to see it has an image ID and the name. So it just lists a name of all the images from within. You can just be able to see it lists just a list of these images, the different images inside the validation set. And from here, you can be able to see the amount of images in this data set is close to 7.1 million, but the ones we're dealing with around 5 million images between the train, splitted between the train table and the validation table. So from within here, you can be able to write your different queries. If you need to perform further transformation or further analysis on your data, you can be able to write your different SQL queries directly from within Synapse, and you can be able to interact. With that. Now because we've already read our zipped, we've already been able to extract these different zipped folders. We've saved the data into a SQL data warehouse. Next thing, if you remember from the architecture diagram, was to load that was to train the machine learning model using Azure Databricks and the Azure ML. Now, from within the Integrate tab, I just want to show you how everything now ties together. We're just going to close that script and close that. You can come directly here and create a pipeline. Now, assuming we've not done any of all of that, just to show you how everything ties together, I can be able to come right here in the Develop tab, start with, and I can open, like for example, the copy metadata files, and I can be able to add these to a pipeline, maybe a new pipeline, and we can call these the new pipeline. And then also take the save JSON, and I can also add this to the pipeline. I can add it to the current pipeline that I've created. I'm just going to close some of these so that we can have some more real estate here. And then I can start arranging these different workflows in the order I would like them to execute. So we'll start by copying the zipped metadata files, and then we'll save the JSON. And then from here, we can connect to the Azure Databricks. We can look for Databricks from here. So we can link to a Databricks notebook, and I can configure the settings right here. Sorry about that. I can configure the settings right here. So I'm just going to expand these. So from here, I can select the Databricks connection that we have created to Azure Databricks. Set the settings. I can browse the notebook that contains the notebook that contains the code to train the ML model. So that one is located inside here. So you have this one, the Databricks Serengeti. So you select that, and I can be able to show you where that one is. So if I was to go back to Azure, to the different resources I showed you we had created for this resource, you can be able to see we have our Databricks service right here. And if I was to open the Databricks workspace, this is going to ask me to sign in. So this is inside the Databricks workspace. You can just come to workspace. So this one is inside here. This is the one we're using, Databricks Serengeti. Sorry about that. Sorry. Clicked something. So just need to close this one. So yeah, so we have the code right here to train the machine learning, the machine learning model, and so we can just be able to bring that in directly inside Synapse. And so that's it. So once we can just bring that inside Synapse, and we can be able to tell it after saving the JSON data, because this code, the code inside Databricks is relying on the data stored in the SQL warehouse. So after executing that, you can be able to, sorry about that. After executing that, you can be able to run the notebook. And so using the pipeline, you can be able to arrange, or you can be able to have your different workloads in the order that you want them to execute. And you can add different triggers onto these different activities in terms of like how is this going to be triggered? Are you going to run it on demand, or how are you going to arrange these different workflows? And so after doing all of that, after creating the pipeline, I can be able to save and then run it, and then it's just going to perform the different workflows that we have defined from our notebooks and also onto the machine learning job inside Azure Databricks. So the next thing I would like to show you is Power BI. Now that we've been able to, we have our data in the SQL data warehouse, and we would like to maybe visualize the data that we have inside the SQL inside the SQL data warehouse right here, and would like to visualize that from within Power BI. How to do that? If you remember, if you go back to your linked services, you can just add a new link, and then you just look for Power BI. And then you just click continue. You provide the different details, and then you should be able to create your linked service. I had already created mine, and here it is. Now, once you have created your link to Power BI, you can come back right here inside the Develop Hub, and I'm going to close the demo pipeline. Yeah, I'm just going to close the demo pipeline to save on, and then inside here under Power BI, if this is not there, you can be able to come here and add, and then just click on Power BI report, and you should be able to access that. Now, if you come here under Power BI datasets, you can see right now we do not have any dataset inside this Power BI workspace that we've linked to. So I can be able to just add Power BI dataset for this particular SQL data warehouse. And to do that, just click Start, and then I just select the SQL pool I want to use. So for this, we only have one SQL pool associated with our Synapse workspace. I'm just going to click on that, and then we're going to download the file. And so download and just open. So this should open on Power BI desktop. So should take a little bit of time. So good. You see it. So it connects, and you can be able to see it creates the different tables inside our Power BI workspace. So I'm going to select the different tables that I want. So there you go. So I'm going to select these different tables, and then I'm just going to click on load. So I'm just going to select import and OK. So this is going to load. So it is going to load directly here. It's taking time. Let's give it a little bit more time. All right. Okay. In the meantime, I don't know whether we have any questions on. Shall I can try answer? Sorry about that. As we wait for this to load. Let me see whether we have any questions. Oh yeah, someone asked, is there a basics overview that discusses when, why, how of connecting each of the components? So the when will be determined by the different services that you're using. And remember from the architecture diagram for this demo that I showed the different services that we're going to be using for to solve this particular problem. And so that will be governed entirely by the different services you want to use. And so once you've determined the different services you're using for your particular solution, now that will determine the kind of components or the kind of linked services you're going to be using. Inside your Synapse workspace. So, like for example, if I was to go back briefly back here. Let me just cancel here. If I was to come back here under manage and under the linked services, you can be able to see I linked to Azure Databricks because I already have an Azure Databricks service that I'm using to train my machine learning model. So I can just bring that right into Synapse so that I can be able to run these jobs as planned. Like, I've extracted my data and now my data is ready for training the machine learning model. The code for training the model is in Azure Databricks. So I can just bring that right into Synapse. Something like the service to the Azure Vault, bring that in because it has the credentials stored, the credentials for the Azure Data Lake storage and also for the SQL database. So the when is dependent in terms of the when is dependent in terms of the different services you're using. The how, if the how right inside here linked services, you have a link that you can be able to use inside here, learn more. You can be able to learn about the different linked services you can be able to use for your different solution. So I hope I've answered your question in terms of the when and how for the linked services. Now, going back here, oh, this is taking longer than I expected. Not sure whether it's
Quick one, Josh. We lost your video stream for a second, so maybe you can turn on and off the camera, but the audio was good. I just wanted to quickly step in and mention this one. And there was a question about, the recorded sessions. I just put the link in the chat for everyone to go back and also see the other parts of the series. So today is the last part of a 4-episode series. So, yeah.
okay. Can you still see my screen?
I lost the video to not your desktop, your camera.
What about my desktop?
Your desktop is
You need to
off. I think you've stopped sharing.
Oh, sorry, but not sure what happened. All right, let me share again. Let me share my desktop.
In the meantime, as always, the floor is open for questions, and we're streaming live, so this is a chance for everyone in the community to send us questions through.
Right. Okay, seems like it finished loading right here. Not sure what's going on with my video feed, and because of time, just allow me to continue. So you can be able to see it loaded the different tables right into Power BI, and with that now right here, you can be able to create your different reports. But what's even better is I can be able to come here and maybe just publish this data set to my Power BI workspace. So I can publish these to Power BI, and I can call these demo. Sorry. Just save these and then publish these to Power BI. So it should take a few minutes. All right. Okay. Okay. Not sure. It seems like my device just froze right there. Yeah, seems like it just froze. But just to explain, in the interest of time, because it seems like Power BI just froze on me. I'm not sure why. Maybe since I'm connecting to a remote device, that could be the issue. But if after successful publishing, if I was to come under inside the develop tab, I should be able to access my dataset from here, and I can be able to perform, maybe I can be able to create my Power BI reports and different visualizations right within from Synapse. So I can be able to establish that connection. I can be able to perform different operations or different operations on the dataset just right within Synapse. So yeah, this just froze on me. Sorry about that. But basically, that's what should happen. So you can be able to link your Synapse workspace with Power BI, and then you can be able to perform your different operations, your different Power BI operations right within from Synapse. So just going to stop sharing and switch back to my screen. Yeah, back to my slides. Yeah, and so that's basically it, an E2E scenario on the integration of Azure Synapse Analytics with Power BI. And we've been able to see how you can be able to load data into your Synapse Analytics workspace using Azure Synapse pipelines. You can be able to use pipelines. You can be able to use the different notebooks and then bring that onto the Synapse pipeline, and you can be able to ingest your data into the Synapse workspace, store these data into an Azure Data Lake storage, and then we can be able to perform transformations on the data that is in the Azure Data Lake storage, and store that data into our Azure SQL pools, into the Azure SQL data warehouse. And then after storing that data, this data can be accessed by different services. For example, Power BI, we've seen how you can be able to link Power BI to read the data, and from there you can be able to create your visualizations. My apologies, Power BI just froze. Not sure why, but you can be able to link Power BI directly with your Synapse workspace. And then from there, you can be able to create your visualizations and maybe generate reports based on the data that you have in Synapse. Also, these data can be accessed by different services like the Azure Databricks, which can then be used for your machine learning workloads. So that's basically it, an E2E scenario in terms of how you can ingest data on Synapse, perform transformations, and eventually perform data visualizations using Power BI. So I'll stop there in the interest of time and just check whether we have any further questions.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I don't know what is wrong with your video. Guess is your system kind of. So we're so sorry for our viewers. Don't worry, you can see me. We are going to give Josh some grace. But that is a very wonderful presentation. I learned a lot on Synapse and how at the end of the day they connect to Power BI. So that was actually beautiful to watch. I always think that, that if you click on get data, data source, you can always click on Azure. I've never thought that you can just get your PBIDS files and just upload it and on it, as in open it, and it just opens up your Power BI. And that is beautiful. I will go and practice that more and see how that goes. But my major question, because of time, is that, um, can we going to have a, let's say, a step-by-step blog post on this, so that for those who might not understand, like the former question of when are we connecting to which component, they'll be able to understand if we have a step-by-step guide to that. What do you think, Josh?
Yes, we'll be publishing two blogs for this particular demo, and those should be out in the coming weeks, and so they should be able to explain a detailed step by step, from the why we did these, like the choice of the different link services that we have, and how we are actually doing each step, and even go into the details of the training, and finally the how Power BI also how we link Power BI with the trained data, and visualize the training process. So all of that should be coming out in the next few weeks. So we'll be having two blog posts for this particular session.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. Over to you, Sam. Thank you very much, everyone, that have been with us from the first session to this session. There's so many enticing things that is coming to Power BI, which I want you to follow us. We'll come back again with another Power BI everywhere session before June, and you will see so many marvelous things within the power of Power BI and all other Azure services. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, David, and thank you, George, for today's session. David, we have been on an amazing learning journey. We should continue doing this. And for everyone who missed the previous parts, I posted again in the chat where you can find the playlist for the videos that we have recorded. Everything that we stream on the Reactor goes onto the Reactor YouTube channel, and it's always available right away for you on demand, so that you can just like review at any point of time and like jump between different parts and do it on your own. That will be something that you can do on your own pace. We also shared few learning resources for you also in the chat, so make sure that you follow along and continue the learning journey. We are always sharing new content and new series on the website, on the YouTube, on the meetup. So make sure that you are subscribed and part of all of these events. And until next one, hope you stay safe, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.